Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to follow the incredible journey a new medicine takes. We're talking about a process that can take a decade or even more, starting from just a tiny spark of an idea in a lab and ending up with the patient who really needs it.
Have you ever really stopped to think about the story behind the medicine that's just sitting in your cabinet? It's not just a simple pill. It's a story of incredibly high stakes, some really rigorous science, and a whole lot of perseverance. So let's dive into that complex journey, which is all designed to make sure the treatments we all rely on are both safe and effective.
Okay, so before we jump in and follow our potential new drug on its quest, let's first get a handle on the why. What are the fundamental principles guiding every single step of this process? What's this whole system actually designed to do? The whole thing really rests on a few core pillars. It's all about safety, making sure these medicines are safe for people to use. Then there's efficacy. Do they actually work? Do they provide a real clinical benefits? Quality is huge too. The manufacturing has to be super consistent. And finally, clarity. Patients and doctors need reliable scientific evidence. It's this constant balancing act, right? Pushing for innovation while always protecting public health. All right, so here is the basic roadmap of the journey. Think of it like the 5 major stages in our medicine's quest. We start with discovery, that spark of an idea. Then it's preclinical research in the lab. After that, the big one, clinical trials in humans. If it survives that, it faces regulatory review, and even after it's approved, there's post-market monitoring. And let me tell you, it is a long, tough road. Failure is honestly more common than success at every single one of these steps. Okay, so every quest has an origin story, right? For a new medicine, that story begins with just a single idea, born in the super controlled environment of a laboratory. We're talking long before any human patient is even in the picture. The best way to think about this first part is like a giant funnel. First, scientists have to figure out what to even aim for. That's target identification, finding a weak spot in a disease. Then comes the crazy part. These screen thousands, sometimes even millions of different molecules to see if any of them have an effect. From that massive pool, they hope to find just a handful of promising compounds that they can then refine and optimize. It's an incredible process of elimination. But here's the thing. A compound might look amazing in a petri dish, right? But a petri dish is a long way from a complex, living, breathing person. So before our hero drug can get anywhere near a human trial, it has to pass its first really big test, preclinical research. And this is where researchers start asking some really critical questions, like, is this stuff toxic at certain doses? How does a living system actually absorb it and break it down? And, the big one, does it show any real evidence that it might actually work? To get these answers, they have to do a ton of lab work and animal studies. So, if, and that's a big if, the drug passes all those preclinical tests, the developers then take all that data, all of it, and package it up. This becomes what's called an investigational new drug application, or an IND. Think of it as the official key that they need to even ask for permission to unlock the next, and you could argue, the most critical stage of this whole journey. All right, with that permission granted by the regulators, our potential medicine finally leaves the safety of the lab. And now it enters the most challenging part of its quest, what I'm calling the gauntlet, testing in human volunteers. This is where the stakes just get exponentially higher. Now, these human trials aren't just one big free-for-all. They follow a really strict, logical progression. It starts with phase 1, a small group of volunteers, maybe 20 to 100 people, and the main goal here is just safety and figuring out the right dose. If that goes well, they move to phase 2. Now we're talking a larger group, hundreds of patients, and they're looking for early signs that it actually works, plus keeping a close eye on side effects. And if that succeeds, they go to the huge phase 3 trials with thousands of people to really definitively confirm the benefit and see how it stacks up against other treatments already out there. And believe me, this whole process is an unforgiving gauntlet. A lot of promising drugs just don't make it through these phases. It's only by successfully passing all 3 of them that a potential medicine can build up the powerful, undeniable evidence it needs to face its final judgment. So, after all those years of trials, all that data, and everything, from the very first Petri dish experiment to the results from that last patient in the phase 3 trial, it's all gathered up into one massive submission. And now it goes before the ultimate judges, the regulatory authorities.
Now, depending on what the drug is actually made of, the company will submit one of two main types of applications. There's the New Drug Application, or NDA, which is for your more traditional, small molecule synthetic drugs. And then there's the Biologics License Application, or BLA. That's for the more complex stuff, like vaccines or those modern antibody therapies you hear about. And this is not something they just skim through. We're talking about huge teams of experts, doctors, statisticians, chemists, who literally pore over thousands and thousands of pages of data. They scrutinize every single thing: the clinical trial results, the preclinical safety data, the manufacturing standards, even the wording on the proposed label. They leave absolutely no stone unturned.
After all that incredibly detailed analysis, it really boils down to one simple fundamental question. Do the potential benefits of this medicine outweigh its potential risks? That's the core of it. Is it worth it for the patients it's designed to help?
So you might think getting that official stamp of approval is the end of the story, right? The finish line. But actually, the drug's mission has really only just begun, because now its journey moves from the controlled world of clinical trials into the real world. See, once a drug is out there and being used by millions of different people in all sorts of situations, things can pop up. You might see rare side effects or long-term issues that just didn't appear in the clinical trials. And that's exactly why this post-market monitoring is so critical. It's all about building a complete, ongoing picture of how the drug performs in the real world. Yeah, it's basically a continuous feedback loop. Regulators and the companies themselves are constantly tracking reports from doctors and patients. They're collecting what's called real-world data on safety and effectiveness, and they'll even update the product's official label if new information comes to light. This whole final stage is what ensures that our medicines stay as safe and effective as possible for their entire life cycle.
Okay, let's just take a breath for a second and step back. Let's really appreciate the massive scale of this whole journey we've just walked through.
Think about it. From that very first tiny spark of an idea in a lab,
To actually getting that medicine onto a patient's shelf, well, that journey typically takes more than 10 years. That is just an immense investment of time, of scientific brainpower, and, let's be honest, a ton of money, all required just to pass every single test along the way. So yeah, despite the incredible length and the staggering cost, this whole system exists for one really, really important reason: to protect the patient, to protect you. It's a structured, methodical attempt to make sure that by the time a medicine ever reaches you, it has been vetted as thoroughly as humanly possible. And all of this leaves us with a final pretty big thought, right? In an age of AI, of gene editing, and just mind-blowingly fast scientific discovery, how do we evolve this process? Can this long road to healing be made shorter and at the same time even safer? That's really the core question that researchers, doctors, and regulators are wrestling with every single day as they try to bring the next generation of life-saving treatments to all of us.